So let's talk about the energy market outside of the stocks. Barely 24 hours after Nigeria's Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, led a federal government delegation to the Niger Delta region, an unidentified militant group has blown up a crude oil trunk line in Okeli Delta states. Now, the Vice President, while meeting with most stakeholders of the Niger Delta on Monday, said that between January and June last year, over 1,447 cases of pipeline vandalism were recorded. In 2014, over 3,700 incidents were also recorded. But even though the Vice President has begun a series of interactive engagements with oil-producing communities, first meeting in Baramatu Kingdom of Delta State, there was a message, and that message, he said, was it is time to prepare for the future. A future of progress and development. Now, he's talking to the stakeholders of the Niger Delta, but we've got other stakeholders in the Niger Delta as well, including oil-producing companies. So what is their role in the federal government's peace meetings? Let's bring in Kola Karim, Chief Executive Officer of Shoreline Energy International. A good morning to you, Mr. Karim.
Good morning.
So the week started out focusing primarily on what's going on in the oil and gas sector with the federal government, with the Vice President leading the federal government's delegation to the Niger Delta to meet with the key stakeholders. For you, will this bring peace at last for the Niger Delta?
I think for the first time there is, again, as shown by the federal government, commitment from all sides to coming together and getting a resolve once and for all to this issue. So if you see the Vice President, the person of the Vice President, flying to the Niger Delta with his delegation, we included the Minister of State for Petroleum, including all and most of the community leaders, the state governments. So you see the full involvement for the first time of all the stakeholders on ground in the Delta in getting a comprehensive resolve together in fashioning a way forward that is fundamental for all.
Well, Mr. Karim, with the bombing of this pipeline now, do you get the sense that it's a sign that some stakeholders or some of the stakeholders are saying, if you don't give us attention because we are peaceful, we can be violent?
Look, the real intricate, delicate position about the issues in the Niger Delta is this. You've got several different communities jostling for one and the same thing. One thing is sure, everyone wants peace and harmony, but what is also critical and important is everyone is clamoring for development in the Niger Delta. But the federal government also is showing its hands, the companies are showing their hands, saying we want the same. We want a peaceful place to operate from. The federal government wants a peaceful environment for all. The state government also, within their involvement in this whole thing, deriving its own income and revenues from this, also wants peace. So the reality is all hands needs to be on deck. It's showing itself that all hands are on deck in making sure we all come to a logical conclusion that will be of benefit to all.
So in talking about the role that oil companies need to play at this time to calm restiveness and militancy in the Niger Delta, one of the points that was raised in the 16-point demand by this Niger Delta stakeholders was for oil companies to relocate their administrative and operational headquarters to the Niger Delta region. How workable is this?
Look, it is very workable. What is important is all the operational base of all these oil companies are in the Delta anyway. So the reality is the headquarters is just administrative and financial staffers that are not based there. But the key boots on ground are the operational staff, and most of them are operating from the Delta. We made a commitment with the government, with the stakeholders, this is Shoreline, that we will position our operational headquarters into Warri in making sure, as part of our commitment for a comprehensive position.
We seem to have lost the connection there with Mr. Kola Karim, who's the CEO of Shoreline Energy. We're going to try to reconnect with him for him to continue this conversation. He's talking about how most of these oil and gas companies are anyway trying to relocate their administrative offices in the Niger Delta region, and talking about how his company is doing that. And right now we're focusing on how oil and gas companies, their role in making sure that there's peace at last, being part of the federal government's move to bring peace at last to the Niger Delta. On Monday, the Vice President led a delegation, including the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Dr. Ibe Kachuku, and the President's Special Advisor on Niger Delta Affairs, who went to talk to some of the stakeholders and give the federal government's commitment to ensuring that the 16-point demand raised by Niger Delta stakeholders, at least most of it, is met. So we've been able to reconnect with Mr. Kola Karim now. Mr. Karim, thank you so much for joining us again on the program. So let's get your finishing thoughts on that particular issue, talking about the siting of administrative and operational headquarters. And you said the Shoreline Energy has already gone ahead and made plans to site their administrative offices in Warri.
No, we're looking at putting our operational base back into Warri in making sure it fits with the agenda as promised and proposed to the governor and all the stakeholders in Delta State. And I'm sure all the other oil companies operating in the region will definitely want to do so. But what is critical and important is this: security is very important to operations and to our people. That is the most important thing. We have a lot of people going in and around the Delta. It is important that guarantees of safety also must come with this. So we can't move people if we do not have that assurance of safety for our staff. So it's important that all stakeholders come together, as is being pushed now by the federal government and the state government, with the local community, with the help and support of the oil companies, to make sure we have a lasting solution to this Niger Delta issue.
So what are oil companies doing in this regard, in terms of calling the concerned communities, let's sit together, this is much as your business and my responsibility as it's yours. So how are we going to ensure that we protect our staff, we'll protect this very vital infrastructure that continues to service the nation, services community, and services the nation as a whole?
What has happened the last year since the Transfer Carter's initial attack in February last year, and with the declaration of force majeure, you can understand the financial strain not only on the companies, on the federal government, but more importantly also on the communities. If you can imagine at a field logistics base, you can imagine the communities there, the women, the mothers, the fathers who are providing support services to these field logistic bases. There's not been an operation since last year. There's not been any business. So you can imagine everyone in the value chain is suffering. It's the effect of this attacks is affecting everyone from the community upwards to the federal government. So what is key critical is we, the companies, are committed. We see very strong commitments now from the communities also. Everyone wanting lasting, peaceful resolution to this situation. But more importantly, the federal government is leading the way now, and you can see that from the commitment in making sure we have a lasting resolution.
Now that oil production is gradually ramping up, even though for most of last year we saw oil prices and oil production from Nigeria fluctuating between 1.3 in some cases and 1.6 million barrels per day. But we have oil production ramping up, and that's projected to get to about as much as 1.8 million barrels per day. And oil prices are looking better at $55.64, according to early numbers today. What's the situation like for oil firms? Is it going to be a good year, or is it too early to say?
It is too early to call. What is critical to the survival of these companies, including ourselves, is a peaceful resolution to the Niger Delta issue. Continuous attacks on the infrastructure and pipelines will continue disrupting our operations. In turn, would affect federal government's obligation to Nigerians, because the government cannot continue generating revenues, same as the companies, and more importantly, same as the state and local governments. So there is an urgent position, and the effect is to all of us as a people must come together in making sure there's a lasting resolution, because if that does not happen, the oil prices, be it a high oil price environment, will not be benefited at all, because oil in the ground is no good if we're not producing it, selling it, and taking advantage and opportunity of the high oil prices.
So what will companies such as yours be doing now for 2017, keeping a very close eye, of course, on the Niger Delta and global oil prices?
What is important to us is, one, making sure we have a very settled community and a robust community program in making sure we are in a very good environment to operate, to continue to take advantage of the increasing oil prices on the global level. So our focus for 2017 is keep the engagement going, keep our negotiations and discussions going, keep the interaction going from the federal government with NNPC, who are partners, and the local communities, in making sure there's a lasting solution that Nigeria and Nigerians can benefit from the global prices and the opportunity given to Nigeria by OPEC in sustaining our production.
Mr. Kola Karim, thank you so much for your perspectives this morning. Kola Karim is the Chief Executive Officer of Shoreline Energy International, joining the conversation, of course, as we take a look at what the federal government is doing in terms of bringing lasting peace to the Niger Delta and the role oil and gas companies will be playing. And as he says, that most companies are already looking at ensuring that they are part of this discussion and help with the lasting solution to the Niger Delta and bring peace to the region. And so most of them are looking at the possibility of relocating some of their administrative and operational headquarters to the region. Coming up just in a moment, we'll also be focusing on the politics and economics of saving versus sharing oil revenue. As I already mentioned, oil prices as an early trade are hovering around $56 per barrel. So it's a good time and it's a good year for some of those countries that actually depend, including on Nigeria, depend on oil revenue. In the 2017 budget, we have the oil benchmarked at $42.50 per barrel. And so if we have oil prices at this, if you joined the conversation yesterday, you would have listened. That person says that if we have that kind of savings, about $8 of each barrel that we make and 1.8 million barrels per day by the end of, for 2017, that's a lot of money. That's about $14.40 million per day. So what are we doing with regards saving versus sharing? Okpemi Agbaje joins the conversation after now. Stay with us.